Picture this. It's the beginning of 2024, and you just spent the last 3 years getting burned investing in meme stocks, watching your cryptocurrency investments fall to zero, and betting on Cathie Wood's exaggerated promises through the ARK Innovation ETF. You think, okay, now it's time to grow up and be a big boy. I'm just going to head down to my local bank branch and get some reputable financial advice there. So you go down to the bank branch, you invest some money, and then bam, you end up getting killed in management fees. Do things like this actually happen? Yes, they do. And they're more common than you think. In a recent article for CTV News, Christopher Liu writes that Canadian financial advisors, particularly those employed by the big banks, are often incentivized to use high-pressure sales tactics to get investors into high-fee funds that may not be the best for their needs. Liu writes, while some advisors are salaried or paid hourly, many also charged asset management fees or earn commissions by selling certain financial products and services. They can also have aggressive sales targets to hit in order to reach a certain bonus or to not get fired. And then he continues, here a greedy advisor may attempt to use high-pressure sales tactics to push products to you that you may not necessarily need, similar to some of the dishonest tactics used by less than reputable car dealerships. After outlining the basic problem of advisors using high-pressure sales tactics, Liu goes on to give a few specific examples. These include upselling unnecessary products, misleading information, making unauthorized account changes, fear tactics, which means basically using fear-based language to push customers into making quick financial decisions, and persistent follow-ups. These are indeed all tactics that you can find advisors at banks using, and furthermore, I would add, they are often used to push you into funds that charge much higher fees than you would get with a low-fee broad market ETF without delivering any appreciably better performance. How high are these fees exactly? Well, they're not exactly always nosebleed fees like the infamous 2 and 20 that some hedge funds are known for charging. However, they are definitely higher on average than the fees you will pay for a low-cost broad market ETF. Here, you can see a list of funds offered by one of the major Canadian banks, and as you can see, the management expense ratio, which is the management fee plus a few other things, ranges between 0.24% and 0.51%. Now, that might not sound like a whole lot, but what you need to keep in mind is the fact that a low-cost S&P 500 ETF these days typically costs around 0.03% to 0.04%, and it usually outperforms most of the funds on this list. Based purely on anecdotal evidence, I would add to the bank's misdeeds of high fees and high-pressure sales tactics the practice of misleading investors about tax-free savings accounts, TFSAs, and registered retirement savings plans, RRSPs. In general, the banks tend to pre-invest these types of accounts into certain funds unless you specifically ask them to open a self-directed TFSA or RRSP for you. A self-directed TFSA or RRSP is one of these accounts which has a brokerage account in it that you can use to buy all the stocks, ETFs, and bonds you want. They do offer these. However, I find that by default, they tend to pre-invest your TFSA and RRSP accounts into a certain mutual fund unless you ask them to do otherwise. For example, about 6 or 7 years ago, before I started getting really into personal finance, I went to my bank and asked them to open a TFSA for me. Without even telling me, they simply opened a mutual fund TFSA where any money that I deposited to that TFSA would be invested into that specific mutual fund tied to the account. Thankfully, I never invested any money into that TFSA, and that's a very good thing because the advisor didn't explain to me the fund's characteristics before opening my account. Also, since learning about self-directed TFSAs and RRSPs and talking to my friends, I found that a lot of them don't know that such options exist. So, it would seem, based on my experience, that banks are trying to kind of hide the self-directed TFSA and RRSPs from clients, hoping to push them into high-fee mutual fund TFSAs and RRSPs. Now, you might be thinking, okay, sure, these bank mutual funds are a little bit more costly than average. However, in exchange for working with a bank financial advisor, I have someone I can call on the phone and ask about my investments when I'm starting to panic during periods of market volatility. It is true that that's one of the big benefits of having a financial advisor. However, it's not necessarily a reason to go to a bank financial advisor specifically. You could go with a fee-only advisor who will give you a model portfolio in exchange for a set fee, and then you can implement that yourself for the remainder of your investing career. Also, the financial advisors employed at banks are not always the most consummate professionals. In order to be an advisor in Canada, you need to pass the Canadian Securities course and another related ethics course. I actually took the Canadian Securities course, not because I needed it for work, but because I'm interested in finance and I thought I could learn some things from it that might be useful in investing. I just studied on weekends and evenings, and after about 2 months of studying, I passed both exams with 78s. It's not an especially difficult course, and it's the only one you need to take to be a financial advisor in Canada. At this point, you're probably in a panic, feeling that bank financial advisors are a bunch of con artists with no credentials who are going to take you to the cleaners. They're not all necessarily that bad, but with the incentive structure in place at banks, namely the incentive to generate high commissions, you will probably find that on average, most of their advisors do fit the description just given. So, what should you do? Well, I have 3 suggestions for you. First, you could speak to a low-fee independent financial advisor and ask them for a financial coaching session in which they give you a model portfolio for you to implement yourself. Second, you could hire an advisor to manage your entire account for you. This involves relatively high fees, similar to those charged by banks. However, a fee-only advisor will be more independent and objective than they will be and may offer a higher level of service. Third, you can just DIY the entire thing by reading about index investing online. You can master the basics in a day or two, and while there are some things to learn about like rebalancing that may not be completely intuitive, it is basically something that you can do with a DIY approach. So, are all bank financial advisors trying to rip you off? No. Despite the perverse incentives in place at most major banks, there are individual advisors working at them who will be independent, objective, and willing to help, but that will be because of their personal character, not because of the incentives in place at their employer, which are generally bad. By working with an independent financial advisor, you're generally more likely to get objective results, and if you really want to avoid paying high fees, you can always implement a basic buy and hold index fund strategy within a self-directed TFSA or RRSP. That's it for me today. Bye.